Hello, YouTube. So I have decided I'm going to do a little series and I'm going to post some videos about certain things I've been wanting to talk about in this space. I did ask my Instagram followers recently if they would like to find out about what I'm navigating in terms of my own inner work, but then also what's happening in my business and the aha moments and realization and reflections. And so I decided a YouTube series would be the best because there's been lots going on in the past bit. A lot, a lot of things I've learned, a lot of things I learned about myself, about my values, but then also a lot of things that the universe has brought into my world to sit and navigate through. And there is a certain way that I look at things. I'm always constantly questioning everything. Contemplation and reflection is something that I do quite a bit in my life. And so I wanted to share some of the things that I do and how I navigate it. And so in this episode, we are going to talk about triggers, triggers, and how I navigate them. So what are triggers? Because that seems to be a big word in today's day and age. And then I feel like some people have a negative association to this word as well. So if you do have a negative association, I know there's some people around me, mentors, including some friends of mine, love using the word activated. And so whichever word resonates most for you, that's the one, you can use. For myself, triggers is something that I resonate. It doesn't actually create an emotional response to the word. And so that's why it feels good for me to use it. But if you have a negative response to that word, feel free to use the word activated. It's the same thing, if I say universe and you resonate with God, if I say Mother Nature and you resonate with the universe, then those are the words you love to use. So take what resonates in this and leave the rest. So, triggers is usually something that happens, and it could be internally, externally, that causes a negative emotion to come up. It can be a negative emotion such as guilt, sadness, anger, frustration, bitterness, resentment. It could be a range of emotions, but it's usually on the low spectrum. And so when something happens that causes a trigger, it is a breadcrumb for you to dive into, like a little nudge for you to dive into yourself, to learn something more deeper about you. But you still have a choice and you don't have to dive into it if you feel like you are not in the headspace too. So I wanted to kind of bring that up because sometimes if you are someone who has done a lot of healing, and you start overanalyzing every single trigger that comes to you every day, you'll always be healing and never come up for a breath of fresh air. So there are some triggers that you are meant to look at, and then there's some that you are meant to just put on the side and navigate them at another time. And I've done that, which this kind of goes hand in hand with the current trigger. Well, not the current, the most recent trigger that I navigated, that it was something I knew was already there, but I wasn't in the headspace or it was not the time to face it and navigate it. And know that that is totally okay. You cannot heal all the things right now. Healing and growth is through your lifetime. There's always going to be something to heal. There's always going to be some inner work to do. But then also, you live only once. And so come up for a breath of fresh air. Go do things that are fun. Like go have fun, have a good time. Especially, if you are someone who, like me, likes to do insane deep inner work, throughout the winter months. Spring has been the current theme in the past few years. And if there's certain times of year, but then in the summer you like to play and have fun, go play and have fun. We are allowed to take breaks in healing and we are allowed to go out and live a little. And so when it comes to triggers, I love getting curious about them. I love seeing like what am I here to learn from this? Like what is this here to show me? And I think curiosity is the first step. Before trying to figure out where it comes from, why is it there, where does it stem from, getting curious as to what it is. And the curiosity, why it's important is because you open up that part of your mind to be able to receive what you are meant to in this healing aspect. And so when I get triggered, first question I ask myself, is this something I'm meant to look at right now? Wait, no, actually, there's a previous question I actually asked myself. Okay, so one, does this belong to me? Yes or no? The reason, so I want to start there. Does this belong to me? Yes or no? Because sometimes we can take on things that are not our own from other people. So if you are into human design like I am, human design, you have defined centers, you have open centers, and in the open centers, you take on things from the outside world in. And so whether you have an open head or an open solar plexus, open head, you are taking, thoughts that are not your own. Open solar plexus, you are taking on emotions that are not your own. And so sometimes when you are taking these elements on, you can actually take them on and make them part of you, but that's not what you are meant to. You are meant to like, more mirror them back out into the world, and you are meant to like just amplify inspiration. You are meant to like, amplify um yeah, amplify inspiration. And so you want to ask yourself when there's a trigger that comes up if it belongs to you, because there might be a trigger out there that you might think you have, but it's actually not yours. It could be actually something that you've taken on from someone else that you live with. It could be that you've taken it on from who you grew up with, around. There could be many ways that it can come into your world. And so if it doesn't belong to you, then you can, one, allow it to like let it go. If there is a part of you that's holding on to it, then this is where you can get curious and ask yourself, why are you holding on to it? And so you can ask, like, what is it that you are holding on to it, and why are you making it about you? Like, why are you taking on that identity? And that what fear do you have? If there is a fear or a resistance, what resistance do you have of letting it go? Or like if you were to let it go, what fear do you have of what would happen? Or what would that outcome be if you don't want to let it go? So that is if it doesn't belong to you and you can't seem to let it go. But if you can let it go, if you can just release it back into like, back into the earth, back into Mother Nature, let it out. If using any cleansing tools is also a really good way to use this. Like you can use Palo Santo or any cleansing tools that resonate with you, incense, sprays, like, cleansing sprays. That is, a way you could do it. Now, if this trigger does belong to you, so trigger happens, belongs to you, then you go to the next step of, getting curious about it. What is it here to show you? Why did it come into your world? And so from there, opening that up, that will open up a certain part of you to allow to receive the answer. And so when there was a trigger that happened around the full moon in Libra a couple weeks ago. And I'll tell you the story. I decided to get a tea leaf reading. And the reader, she's great. You know, she's a great reader. She's a lovely person. But I think that there was one element that triggered me in what she said. And I don't think that in this element is something that necessarily were to come true, or it can be open to different interpretation as well. Like maybe it will be a different way of it coming true. But it was literally one of my fears that she said, and then it just triggered me big time. And so, and this is a fear that I've had. I know it's been there. I know it's been in the back of my mind, and it just like she just put it front and center. And so I knew that this was something that I needed to look at. And what it was like in the tea leaf reading. Um, I like the whole purpose of the tea leaf reading was around my business. And then we started talking about other things. And so then I changed what the context was. Like I changed what the context was and I asked for a different question. And then I obviously did not get the answer that um that I wanted to hear. I got something that triggered me big time. And so I wanted to ask about my partnership and my relationship. And what I received was that I was gonna be alone to build this business. And that is a fear I've had, that thinking like that I'm afraid that, you know, like everything is gonna fall away from me, like all of it, because I need to put all my energy on this business. And and that fear is there. I know it's there, like because I know there's a part of me that is building something big. I don't know how it's going to show up. I don't know what the outcome of like my business is going to be. Like I'm still in the stages of like just going one foot in front of the other and doing things, doing what I can, such as like showing up here on YouTube, like offering Reiki and tarot to people in town at markets, doing workshops, like all these little things. And so I know that it's meant to be bigger than what I'm just doing now. I just don't know what that is actually going to look like. And so there's this fear I have that in order to build it, like I have a fear that I'm going to be doing it alone in terms of like not being with someone. And that fear is there because I made this realization that for most of my life, I've been single. This is my second like long-term partnership. The first one I've had was 4 years in my late 20s. And this is like the second one I'm in. And so what I've always known was to be on my own. And now that I'm in somewhere new with uncertainty, with unknown what's going to happen, unknown of the future, and embracing this unknown, it can be a little bit nerve-wracking to my system because it doesn't know what's going to happen. And I think that's why I asked that question in the reading. It's because like I didn't ask it from a place of like expansion. I asked it from a place of fear. And so the fear was reflected back at me. And that I just came with that conclusion just now, by the way. And so the fear was mirrored back to me because I asked the question from a place of fear. And it's because all I've known is to be on my own. And so now not being on my own and being with someone, but not knowing like what's going to happen, it's a little uncertain. And so, and so this fear pops up. And then I've had, you know, also this fear of like people leaving me, people abandoning me. And I know that's like there is an like there I know there is a gate in human design. I can't remember which one off the top of my head. But there is a gate that is connected to fear of abandonment in human design. And it's not in the spleen, it's another gate, but I can't remember it right now. And so I know that that's part of my energetic blueprint, but the whole thing of like, if you do have a fear that's connected to your human design, it does not mean that, like you're meant to like embody this fear. It just means that recognizing it, that it's something that is going to pop up from time to time, and can you just hold the space of it? So, but I also know that this fear is also connected through an emotion that's in the past. And the thing is that at that moment, when the reader said, like, my biggest fear, like, like said that I'm going to be alone building my business, it brought up the same feeling as I've had in the past. It was not a new feeling. It was something I felt before. And it almost like feels like that. For me, it felt like that and world of ending kind of feeling. And knowing that it is something that got brought up from the past, the same feeling, and that's when I started to dig into the past to see where did it stem from. And that's where it's connected to inner child healing and why I love connecting inner child healing to this. And so, but before I started going back into the past, I allowed myself to feel the feelings. Like I got off the call and I allowed myself to feel the sadness, to cry, to feel everything. I feel like I allowed it to be and let it flow. And I think that that is really important when it comes to triggers. Um, is that, when something happens and it upsets you and you feel, whether you feel anger or sadness or any emotion, finding that safe place wherever you are to allow those emotions to be. Because they do go away eventually. Like you do stop crying eventually. You will like, eventually like let out the rage and stop being angry. The thing that sometimes some of us have been taught to do is to suppress it, is to put it aside, is to say, like, no, this is not the time, or no, I can't feel this, or oh, this feels shitty. I don't want to feel shitty. And then what we do is we put it aside. And then we don't allow those feelings to actually work through and actually like fully like be released. Like even if you look at animals, right? Like they they go through something traumatic, they shake it off right away. They don't sit there and be like, oh, I'm okay, right? Like, I'm okay. I can't deal with this right now, so I'm going to push it to the side. Like, no, they allow it to just be released in the moment. And so I allowed myself that. I allowed myself to just fully feel the feels. And then I I started like reflecting. Now, when it comes to like reflecting of the past, and especially when it comes to like inner child healing, sometimes coming up with answers in the moment of like, when was the last time I felt this may be challenging and depending on where you're at. And so there are clues as to, like how you can kind of like really brainstorm that. And so like different ways. And so one of it would be like, so one of it is like classic, like asking yourself, when was the last time you felt this way? When was the last time you felt like this exact way? And what was happening at that time? And can you go back a little further? Was there a time before that? And then continue going back as further back as you can and seeing like try to get to that stem root point. That's one way to do it. Another way to do it is to pop in an inner child meditation. You can find there's a few here on YouTube. Excuse me. There's a few here on YouTube. Also, Insight Timer app is like an app that I resonate with, and they got like tons of meditation, including inner child. And so I love inner child meditations. So this is if you are somebody who loves visualization meditations, because I feel like that's where you will kind of like be able to get to the root. So normally in those meditations, you meet that younger version of yourself. And so you can see where did it stem from. And it'll be like a certain age, a certain period of your life. And you can get curious about what was happening in your life at that time. Now, inner child healing doesn't mean that it's always related to something traumatic. It just means that any age from the age you are today, you may have experienced something that you didn't fully allow your emotions to feel the feels. Remember when I said earlier, we've been taught to push it down, like maybe because there's certain other things that are happening in life that it's like, no, now is not the time. Or maybe we don't know how to handle it, so push it down. Or maybe we're just like young and we're 5 years old and we misinterpret what was actually happening and created a story about ourselves. So that is like the meditation will access the subconscious. And then from there, you can kind of get to the root and brainstorm why that was happening and what was happening around that time. And how did that younger version of you feel? That's another way. Another way that you can get clues, you can get clues of like, have there been any like dreams? So like your dreams is your subconscious. So it does tell you a lot about yourself. So are there any dreams that you've had recently that is, in theme of a certain time in your life, like people, like maybe, like there's that, in your dream this friend from high school like popped in and you haven't thought about them since then. That could be a clue or like a toy or anything that comes from the past that you're like, oh, I haven't thought about this year. Like, why did I dream about that? And so that could be a clue of like where that trigger stems from. It could be around that time frame. And so then you can start, using that as a brainstorm. Outside of dreams, what kind of music are you currently listening to? Are you listening to, a song that you loved in your 20s? Has that been something that going on repeat, like that you feel like listening to and dancing to? Or are you watching a certain, set of movies, like more than one from like a certain like year, like, and they all were like, they all came out during that year. So these are clues. It doesn't mean that, like, that it doesn't mean that, like the movies, like, it's the sign, but it's just like it's somewhere to get curious about in order to see where did this stem from. And so I know, like, in terms of like my abandonment, like, this is something, again, because it's something that is a fear that is in my energetic blueprint. Like, I know it's something that I'm holding through and working with holding. And so I know that when I was in daycare, because I remember like, it's funny, as I'm talking, this is the story that pops up. So this is what the story I'm going to share. When I was in daycare, um, I was there, I believe, like my cousin was also there, and my mom, for some reason, was very late to pick me up. And I saw my aunt come pick up my cousin. And when my aunt picked up my cousin but didn't pick me up, I thought my mom forgot about me. And I thought I was going to be like forgotten and be there by myself. And I remember that feeling so well. And I remember that moment so well. And that, so when it came to like in the future, in my other partnership and even in like this one, there is this like certain, someone who means so much to me and in my life, there's a certain level of like, oh, they're gonna leave me, they're gonna forget about me. And when that feeling pops up, it's like it feels like the end of the world. And I remember like the last time before this trigger that I felt it was like when my old partner in my 20s, like when like he was breaking up with me. And it just felt like this anxiety feeling. And so it's stemming from, like 5-year-old Julie from that moment in daycare. And like eventually my mom came and picked me up and all was well. But the thing is that that moment stuck with me and it stuck within my body. And even though logically, I know that's where it comes from. Like logically, I know it's an abandonment wound. It doesn't take away the feeling that I feel. It doesn't take away when someone says those words that I'm going to be all alone, that is going to trigger that emotion. And that's what a trigger is. It's like a trigger. Even when you've done a lot of inner work, your mind knows, your mind is aware, your mind is like, oh, like, like this is why it's happening or this is why it is. But it doesn't take away of what you're feeling. And so this is why it's important when those triggers come up to open up the space to feel it. To open up the space to allow yourself to cry, allow yourself to be angry, allow yourself to be upset, allow yourself like just allowing it to flow. That's why it's so important because allowing it, you're releasing it. You need like as you can do all the journal prompts and all kind of like the mental part. But if you don't take care of like allowing the emotions to pass and like actually feeling them and letting them come up, then that trigger will continue to happen. The body is the one that's holding on to it. And sometimes it's the body and the mind. But once you take care of the mind, then you need to allow the body to release it as well. And so I allowed those feelings to feel. And then the other thing I like to do is I actually like to do something else in order for the body to release it. And and so this can be there's so many modalities. So people use different things. Like I'm a Reiki healer, so I know Reiki healing is another way to energetically release something like this. Like after you've done the mental work and allowed the emotions to feel, if you feel like there's a part of you that's still holding on to it, then there's like another step that you can do. So this is like whether to get like energy healing. So that is something. Some people use breath work, EFT tapping, somatic movement. There's just so many things out there. And so this is where playing with the universe and seeing what comes in to your world as to what that next step would be. And that's where I love surrendering to what I receive because then I know that's in alignment in that next step. Um, I like playing with that with my environment, but if you feel like if you get a sudden hit of like, oh no, it needs to be energy healing or it needs to be EFT tapping, you can trust that as well. It can be either or. It doesn't need to be like one way. And everything I share, like it doesn't need to be like such a concrete way. I just share my process on how it works for me. Your process might be different. You might like half the things I talked about today and the other half things you're like, that doesn't work for me, and that's okay. So that happened. Yeah, that happened on a Thursday, and I believe the full moon was on a Saturday. And I believe it was either the Wednesday or the Thursday. I received a text message from a friend of mine because she was offering a moon circle with breathwork. She was doing a collaboration with a woman in town who does breathwork. And so she's like, hey, if you want to come, let me know. And I was like, okay, I'll think about it. And then Thursday, I received the trigger and then kind of like moved through the emotions, like processed it, analyzed it. And then Friday, I was like, yeah, I need to do the breath work. I need to like release this. And so it was the full moon circle was on the Sunday, so the day after the full moon. And it just like helped to go in there with that intention, because I know it was a trigger. I know where it stems from. I knew all the mental things. And then I was just like, okay, I felt the emotions, but it is time to like release it on an energetic level, release it on a deeper level. And so I created that intention going into that workshop and then went through the breathwork sequence. And so I was feeling like and so the breath work was the three-part breath that you inhale, like you inhale from your mouth into your belly, chest, and then you release. And then you kind of do that, and there's music in the background. And I was going through that sequence. And as I was going through that sequence, like at one point I was like really into it. And then the facilitator, like she came in and all she needed to do was she just put her arms right here. And in that moment, I think that was like the permission to be safe because that was the first time I was also doing breath work in a group setting. There's other people in the room. So there was this like element of like conscious element of like, there's other people here, like not maybe fully allowing myself to be, but then just her putting her arms on me, it allowed me to feel safe and held. And I just let it out, just started crying, but like that intense, like I needed to like shaking cry. And yeah, that was like that needed to be released. And so that, and now even thinking about that moment, and so now it's weeks later, like I believe 2 weeks later, and in kind of like looking back and thinking in that moment and even feeling it of like what that tea leaf reading said, it doesn't bring up that same like like feeling like end of the world like trigger. It doesn't bring that up. Like looking back and even being able to tell you the story and just not having it feel like that. And even and I had some people give me like their alternative perspectives. They're like, well, it was a business, reading. I'm like, maybe that's not what she meant, like in terms of your relationship. Like maybe she meant like you growing your business on your own. Like not it's like not collabing, like not having like a second person in your business, like a partnership or, like being dependent on, like a another person. It's like it's just you. And so that was that was like a nice reframe because really at the end of the day, it was a business reading. But I think that triggered needed to be shown to me, needed to come out and get mirrored back at me for me to work through it. For me to work through that fear of being alone for the rest of my life. And so, and why do I believe that that is important to work through that and to like one, um, I don't want the fear controlling my life and being the steering wheel because that's like a classic thing of self-sabotage. Like if I have like imagine like having, and I'm sure you've had it in the past, like I know I've had it where I've had this like fear that was so deep that um it controlled my life and I made decisions based on that fear and then like that fear would come true. And like I don't want that. I don't want that to be my own self-sabotage for certain things ending. That is not the life I want to live. Like I don't want to live a life based on fear. I don't want to live a life um making decisions on fear either. And so that is that is basically how I navigated it. And I definitely feel a lot calmer. I definitely feel a lot more grounded, more in my confidence and myself, but then also like my confidence in my relationship, my confidence in what I'm doing in this world, all the elements. And it doesn't feel like it doesn't bring up that crazy feeling anymore. And so I wanted to share that with you now, keeping in mind I did collapse time on this healing in this segment. But no, this has been a fear that's been stemming for a very long time from the age of 5. It had popped up in my previous relationship. And so healing is not, one, it's not linear. Two, it doesn't always happen right away. It feels like it may have happened right away or it happens really fast, but that's because like in this case, it's shown up enough that it's like, okay, now I'm ready to navigate this. Um, and so sometimes it may take longer. Sometimes the patterns might repeat themselves, like the triggers might be shown to you more than once. And it's just because like there's something deeper for you to look at each time. So know that it's okay of what, like how you heal and how fast or how slow it heals. Allow it to be. We don't want to rush through a healing process because we don't want to just put a nice little band-aid solution on it. We want to actually like heal the wound so that the triggers don't happen again. So that that you're not facing the same pattern over and over and over. Band-aid solutions, eventually what happens is that the glue falls off and the band-aid and then the wound shows back up again. So we don't want band-aid solutions. You want to actually heal. And so if this resonated, please comment, like it, whatever. If you have questions, throw questions in the comments. I would love to guide you and help you how best I can. Um, and yeah, so that's this episode of the series. And also, if you'd like more of these kind of examples, more of these triggers and inner child healings, like let me know as well. Let me know. I would love to like continue talking about this, but this is like in a nutshell, a lot that I've just like to you. So that's it. So thank you so much for watching. I appreciate you. I hope you have a lovely rest of your day, evening, and I look forward to seeing you next time. Bye.